Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today doing the 2019 NFL Draft recap for the NFC North. Going to go through each person or each team's draft, and talk about some of the picks that stand out to me. I mentioned before, wasn't able to focus in on this draft as much as I have in the past, but still got a pretty good idea of what's going on. So I'm going to just talk about some of the picks that stood out to me. Won't go into depth of each pick, but we're going to go in alphabetical order. So, no shade or preference given. We're going to start with the Chicago Bears, and any Bears fans on this channel, of course, you heard me talk about it. So you get third round pick, no picks in the first round and second round. So if you want to look at it in value terms, our first round pick was Khalil Mack. Second round pick was Anthony Miller, the receiver. Both who I think did great. You're not getting Khalil Mack in the first round. Even though this was a defensive draft, I still think that we necessarily didn't miss out in the first round with getting Khalil Mack. And in the second round, kind of the same thing. Even though some good caliber players dropped, I really loved Anthony Miller last year. So third round, we get David Montgomery. Jordan Howard was traded to the Eagles. Tariq Cohen is kind of a gadget player. And so David Montgomery gives us that steady force. One of my favorite running backs, out of the draft, as I talked about, coming out of Iowa State, just really has a well-rounded game, has a tough nose, and is a real good football player. Then in the fourth round, Riley Ridley, who of course is the younger brother of the star Calvin Ridley, who broke out as a rookie. A lot of people are trying to hype that pick up in the Bears community. He's not near what Calvin was as a prospect, so not really going to try to say he is, but just an interesting pick for me. I just think that receiver is one of the areas, and offense overall, as far as our receiving threats, is one of the areas where we're pretty solid at this year. But this could be looking towards the future and whatnot. We don't need a bunch of immediate starters, and it is the fourth round. But the fourth round has become pretty sexy this year, or in the NFL draft, not this year, in the last few years, where a lot of quality players have come out of the fourth round. So I just wonder about going after receiver there. Then you get Karif White, who I think is a very complimentary, or I would say favorably matched back towards Tariq Cohen as far as returning, as far as receiving, as far as, the explosive 20-yard plus plays. So I wonder kind of what his role will end up being as he tries to find his way on special teams, which isn't what he really did in college. He was more of a returner on special teams, not necessarily like a core special teams player. And so I kind of interested to see what we do with him, especially when we had guys like a Dexter Williams out there. But then Stephen Denmark is a big guy, and I wonder where we're going to end up playing him at safety or corner. I think we need a secondary depth, but safety, I think, would have been the number one concern. And so as a 6'3", big body corner at 220, I wonder if we're going to try to move him to safety. So overall, again, you don't have a lot of picks. You really kind of go with best player available / need. It's a fine line. I think in the first round, you really do best player available, but as you go down the line, you go more for need. And so I think we did an interesting draft, is what I'll say. And I had more thoughts about it in my other video, so I won't spend too much longer time with that. So and I'm not going to give grades this year just because I've always said, grades after the draft means 0. It's all about the grades you get after 3 years, so not going to focus too much on that. So we're going to move to the Detroit Lions. So Detroit Lions, number 1, you take TJ Hawkinson in the top 10. lot of feelings about this. This is not a Detroit Lions thing. This is a prospect thing where I think TJ Hawkinson was a great prospect. I think the tight end group was one of the strongest groups. And you could arguably say that tight end is one of the most valuable positions right now in the NFL, outside of quarterback, of course, except that a lot of these great tight ends came from lower rounds. So does that justify moving up in the top 15, top 20 to get these tight ends? I'm not sure. The problem to me is that people hype TJ Hawkinson up because of his blocking. And to me, it's like, well, okay, everybody, like, people act like they haven't seen blocking before. Yes, we got a lot more receiving tight ends in the league, and that's kind of where the position is moving. But still at the same time, like, tight ends can block. Like, that's not a new thing. So people are kind of crazy about that. And I would say TJ's blocking is better than his receiving ability, where he isn't a great yak receiver per se, but I would say his biggest strength is using leverage and route running, which is very nice, and not a lot of tight ends have it, but he's not super fast. He doesn't have super twitched up ability to explode. So I don't know. I think TJ Hawkinson was a real hype machine that I didn't understand. I thought he was a great prospect. He's not OJ Howard, and OJ Howard didn't go nowhere near close to the top 10. I mean, he's not Rob Gronkowski, who went the second round. He's not any of these guys, but he had such hype. Now, it helped that the offensive skill positions was real low this year. And so that really helped him out as far as being able to get drafted. But still, top 10 is kind of rich for me. And even though you probably wanted to trade back or, get out of that number 8 pick because there wasn't somebody that felt right to you, you didn't get a top guy like a Bosa or a Quinn Williams or Josh Allen. And so even if you can't trade back, I don't know that I would have took a tight end there. So that's just me personally. Again, not a Lions thing, just a prospect thing. And so then you go down, Tavae from Hawaii is a guy I saw on the radar, not as a second round pick, in the top 15 pick in the second round at that. I mean, again, a lot of people make a lot about Matt Patricia and some of the Patriots culture. The Patriots culture is usually taking guys that aren't as highly rated and then really putting them in a position to be effective. But I don't know that I trust the Lions with that. I mean, it isn't just Bill Belichick making those decisions in New England. It's also the rest of the staff and the rest of the front office that understand the philosophy. So I'm not sure that this pick will work out as good in Detroit as it would in New England, because I've seen this guy's name and I've seen his film. He's limited. You're talking about a 4.8, 40. You're talking about a guy that's athletically limited and probably looked more to be a mid-round pick, 4th round down. To get him in the 2nd round, that's kind of rich for me. So 2 picks that were kind of rich for me. You jump down to the 4th round to get Austin Bryant, a guy that I picked up for the Bears, with our mock draft. I believe in the 4th round. So our 4th round pick actually was Austin Bryant in my mock draft. And so I could see him rushing the pass, and I can't knock him. As a guy that I really liked. And so, it'd be interesting to see him in our division. I do think he's tough and rugged and that he can be refined. He reminds me a lot of Trey Flowers, where you're talking about the New England connection. Trey Flowers was not the best prospect coming out. He wasn't the top 10 first round pick or anything like that for a reason. it was like he has limited athletic ability, but he has that kind of intangible. And Austin Bryant feels the same way to me, where he's more athletic than Flowers, but he isn't truly refined yet, but you can see the dog mentality in him, and you want to get him right. And so it'll be interesting to see the Lions kind of put him together as they try to rebuild that pass rush. I mean, you still got Ziggy in now, but you know, that D-line just hasn't been the same for a while. So they're trying to rebuild the teeth in Detroit for the Lions, so to speak. And then, going down, you got, Amani from Penn State, who is a long, big corner. There's a lot of big corners in this draft. He dropped down to the 5th round, which is lower than I thought he would go. And a nice, good press man corner. It'll be interesting to see them mix him in with that secondary. I mean, Darius Slay is the guy that you're really relying on right now. But trying to add some youth to that secondary and trying to add some guys that can learn in that system, I think will be interesting. I mean, we'll get to it later in the other conference, but New England got some longer corners too. And so it's interesting to see the similar mindset between the two with those. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at with Detroit. And so then we got to move on to Green Bay. I have feelings because Green Bay not only got this draft, but they also went and picked up 2 big time free agents. I mean, one more so, I think, with Preston Smith is a guy that I really wanted the Bears to get, but then Darius Smith we'll see kind of what he does as a full-time starter. But on top of that pass rush, they went and got a Rashawn Gary in the 1st round. And for me, I'm just like, you know, hold on to your butts, Miss Trubisky. They are gearing up to come after us. And so I do see a situation, you know, Gary weighed in at 270 something. So I do see a situation where Gary can pretty much come in as a hands in the ground lineman, and they can just be a real athletic twist stunt blitz type front. But I do see a situation where he can be a pass rush specialist, and they bring him in certain situations. But between all these pass rushers, they got a lot of juice. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Green Bay Packers like everybody else, but they got a lot of juice. And so I feel some type of way about them adding Rashawn Gary to the mix after they already picked up those big time free agents. Then you come back later in the 1st round and they got Darnell Savage, he's going to be interesting. I mean, I think he was a late riser for a reason. If you think about his season, you saw a lot of explosiveness, but you didn't necessarily see the production and translatable skills to the NFL. But as you went through the process, you're like, okay, no safety is really standing out like a Minkah Fitzpatrick last year or Jamal Adams, you know, before him. And so Darnell Savage kind of wins off those athletic traits. He's fast, he's explosive, he's sudden, and you can find a spot for him. And it seems like Green Bay has been working forever to get the secondary into point. And you got Jair Alexander, who looks like he's a win. Kevin King, who I think played pretty decently as a rookie, and then I think is trying to get back on track for this 3rd year. But you add those people together, you get Darnell Savage, you talk about taking Adrian Amos from the Bears, and I think there's a real commitment to the secondary there. Elgington Jenkins is surprising. I think he had good talent. I didn't know where he was going to fall. I really thought he could fall anywhere in the mid rounds, but taking him in the second round, I can understand. The guy has a wide body and pretty good feet for the interior position, whether they choose to play him at center or not. Because I believe they had Ryan Lindley or, I can't remember his name, but the guy from, Ohio State that they had at center. So it'll be interesting to see if they just got him to compete at center, but second round pick, I just have to believe that he's going to get every shot at either center or guard. And I do think he's a really good player and a tough, competitive player as well on the interior line. And so trying to continue to protect Aaron Rodgers as he likes to move around, I'm not mad at that pick. You get Jay Sternberger, who was one of the better tight ends. I mean, you got the big three with Fant and Hawkinson, and then you got Irv Smith. Those were the big three. But Sternberger was a pretty good tight end prospect as well to me, like I said. I just think that overall group was pretty good. You're talking about a nice blend of route running and receiving threat and a blocking tight end as well that can kind of move around. I don't know that they'll move around as much as they did in Texas A&M, but a guy that could really complement the Green Bay Packers. A lot of people had Noah Fant to the Packers, but I think tight end, as I said before, is a position where really you could plug anybody in and they can make an impact, because as long as you got that size and speed advantage and you know where you're going in the zone, you'll be fine. So Sternberg is one of the more competitive guys that I liked at the tight end position. And then from Texas A&M as well, Kiki, I really liked him. But then you got to jump down to Dexter Williams, running back. That's the guy that I got for the Bears in the 6th round as well. So, it kind of hurts, to see two of the picks that I had picked up for the Bears in the mock draft end up in our division, but not with the Bears. So Dexter Williams, I think, is a slasher, a little bit of a home run hitter. Definitely won't have the same speed comparison in the NFL that he did in college, but I think is a very nice zone runner. I'll be interested to see what the Green Bay Packers do with him, because they've had a very running back by committee type philosophy. So, I don't know what they plan on doing with him, but it kind of sucks that we didn't get him. So I was really hoping the Bears got Dexter Williams, but I do think he does bring a nice blend of speed and strength, to the running back position. So lastly, we will go to the Minnesota Vikings, who had a pretty busy draft. Number one, you got Garrett Bradbury out of North Carolina State in the 1st round. And I'm going to tell you what, look, I seen guys like Jamal Daniels for the Bears get drafted as a center out of Iowa. I've seen guys like Pat Elflein end up with the with the Vikings. I've seen, I can't remember. Wow, I just blanked on his name, but the center for the Cincinnati Bengals at Ohio State as well. And I just don't see Bradbury as one of the top centers as a prospect in the last few years for him to go in the top 20, especially when a guy like Daniels went in the 2nd round. And I'm glad we got him, but it's just like everybody raves over Bradbury's lateral quickness, ability to seal and trap players. And I'm like, Daniels had the same exact thing plus a little more power than Bradbury, but yet Bradbury went in the top 20. Now, I think this is a result of the offensive side of the ball just not being as strong this year, but still, I just wonder, grabbing the center at 18. And Pat Elflein, I don't think he can play guard. I think he does have size limitations, and as feisty and competitive as he is, and as much as I like him, I do think center is the best place for him. And so having Bradbury come in, who I do think could play guard, but a lot of people are talking about Elflein's going to get kicked to guard. I worry about that. I worry about his strength and his ability to anchor at the guard position, compared to Bradbury. So I'll kind of see how they do that. And I know they want to protect Kirk Cousins. You know, he was harassed, especially by our Bears. And so I don't know that center was a spot that you needed to fix more so than tackle. However, there weren't a lot of great tackles this year, but at 18, I think if you got, I mean, you could talk about a Jawan Taylor. You could talk about a Cody Ford playing right tackle. You could talk about a number of right tackles at 18 that I think probably would have made more sense than Bradbury at center, but we'll see how that kind of works out. Then in the second round, you got Irv Smith, tight end out of Alabama. As I said, one of the big three tight ends. This worries me. I'm not going to lie. This absolutely worries me. I just think Irv Smith, you think OJ Howard, poor version. I know there's a lot of comparisons for tight ends, but you're talking about a move tight end, a tight end that has discipline in the blocking game, but has tremendous upside in the receiving game. And so I worry about either Kyle Rudolph leaving or being tag team with Irv Smith early on. Two tight end sets, as I said during the draft process, is the new sexy thing. And I think that definitely can happen with these two tight ends. But even if you just have Irv Smith out there by himself, I mean, that's a lot to handle. That's a lot to handle with Stephon Diggs and Thielen really dominating the middle of the field and down the field. I think a tight end could really do some damage, especially talking about a tight end that's a lot more athletic than Kyle Rudolph currently is. So it kind of sucks to see him end up in our division because I think he's a great player. And I think they're just trying to give Kirk Cousins all the weapons that they possibly can. So, there it is with that. I mean, the rest of this draft, they got a lot of picks, a lot of lower round picks. The Boise State running back I kind of scratched my head. I know they had the two running backs coming out this year. Madison isn't the one that I thought was the better of the two. So there's that. But then you got Drew Samia out of Oklahoma, who probably, between him and Ben Powers, it's tough to say who's the weakest out of that O-line, but I don't think Samia was a big favorite, but they took him in the fourth round. Cameron Smith, a limited linebacker out of USC. Watts out of Arkansas. Yeah, it's just some bodies out there, so not too much to talk about. Really, you're looking at Bradbury and Irv Smith. Those are some interesting picks. I mean, Irv Smith is a no-brainer in the second round, but Bradbury is an interesting pick. So overall, like I said, I'm not going to give any grades today as far as the drafts that each team had. But if I had to say who had the draft that I put a stamp on, that I could understand the most, if that's the best way to say it, I would say the Green Bay Packers. I mean, I'm a diehard Bears fans. We know a lot of Bears fans on this channel, and that's fine, but I can still separate that and be objective about stuff like the draft and other things. So I would say the Green Bay Packers, like, they probably had the most threatening draft to the Bears. And they also had the draft that I understood the most as far as what they were aiming for. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the NFC North 2019 draft. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you thought about your team's draft picks. Which picks did you like? Which picks did you did not like? What about the other teams in our division's picks? Get the conversation started. Share it around. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.